Welcome to the series of 4 rugby coaching videos called the Rugby Workshops, which build the season progressively for both coaches and players. But what makes a successful rugby coach, or a successful team, or an individual or group of players who go on to realise every schoolboy's ambition to become an international rugby player? Success can be measured in many different ways. Winning is one way, but so is the amount of enjoyment that players and coaches gain from effective preparation and participation. What most players and coaches agree on is that rugby is a complex and ever-changing game. This is why the Rugby Workshops will give you that extra edge when it comes to coaching rugby. This revolutionary new method of coaching looks at new areas and techniques, the methods you will need to meet the challenges of a constantly changing game. You will be able to keep way ahead of rival players, teams and coaches. The 4 videos in this series are introduced and presented by some of rugby's most expert and influential coaches and personalities. Here's John Hart, former All Black and Auckland coach, to explain why the coach must also be the major role model for his players.
Coaching is a tremendous experience. I simply see the role of a coach as creating the environment where the individuals and the team as a whole can achieve their maximum potential. There's nothing better than the end of a day, end of a match, end of a planning session, or end of a season to look back and say, we achieved what we set out to do. So how does a coach achieve this? In my mind, you achieve it by being an effective planner, setting out the season's requirements, setting out the requirements for each training session, for each match, by being well organized, by having a good team around you to support. And don't forget, there are a lot of people out there that would like to help. So maybe someone out there can be a good manager, someone is a good assistant coach, but you need to involve others if you want to create the right environment. Don't take it all on yourself. The coach then needs to select the team well, to induct the players into the team, to have a clear game plan, to ensure that all the members of a team understand the role of a team and the requirements of the individuals within it. You need to have a good captain. Need to ensure that players feel good about themselves. Motivation is a word that's used a lot, but in my view, the motivation required to be a successful rugby player or rugby team is self-motivation. So the role of a coach is to make people feel good about themselves so they can go out then and achieve their potential and what the team requires. When people say that you have to be an effective selector, man manager, psychologist, planner, organizer, it might put us off. But all it takes really is common sense. Because I'm sure from my own experiences that if you have a common sense approach to coaching, it's easy. Rugby is a team game. More than anything else, it requires discipline and it requires standards. And the standards have to be set by the coach. In my time, whether I was dealing with the All Blacks or a club side, I had 3 simple standards that I asked the team to perform. One was timekeeping, one was dress, and one was foul play. I believe if you have a team that is on time, dresses well, and abides by the rules, you have set the fundamentals that you require to build a winning team. So setting the standards comes from you, the coach. Because when you compromise the standards, when you let the team down, where do they go and who do they follow? You are their role model. And role models must be people that are looked up to. So, don't be late. Make sure that when you get to training, you know what you want to achieve. You know what you want to communicate, so that the players come to training and then understand what you are after. Dress. Quite simple, really. If you're going to have a team play like a team, they have to look like a team and feel like a team. Foul play. I think foul play has no place in the game. And I think it's in the hands of us, the coaches, to control that, to set the standard, to tell the team that you will not compromise the requirement to play within the rules. And if someone transgresses that, you've got to be prepared to take action, or otherwise you compromise the team as a whole. A team will not be able to perform to its potential unless you have a clear game plan, unless backs and forwards both know what is required, that everyone knows the calls, that everyone knows the moves, that every individual within the team understands their role within it. So that takes time. You've got to spend some time on a blackboard, taking the team through it, defence and attack. And whilst talking about defence and attack, you know, I go along to a lot of training runs and watch teams train, and they're in the perfect game because they're always attacking, because they've always got the ball. You must practice defence as much as you practice attack, because there's no point in scoring tries and then conceding them because you haven't got an effective defence pattern. Don't underestimate the importance of preparation. Preparation before a match, before a training run. Don't underestimate the need to practice self-analysis. After a training run, come away and say, now, did I achieve what I set out to? Did I do what I should have done to help the team achieve our aims? And training, to me, is the most important aspect that a coach has to implement. Training sessions have to be well planned. You have to know before you come to training what you want to achieve. Then you have to communicate it. I'd urge you to keep training short and sharp. There's nothing worse than long, drawn-out training runs. I'd urge you to use balls to ensure that you develop ball skills. Training runs are not fitness runs. Individuals have got to do their bit away from the training field on fitness. But don't underestimate the importance of grid work, of ball skills at speed to enhance the fitness levels. I had a simple philosophy as a coach: train as we play and play as we train. And I think one of the most important things you can do as a coach is to enforce the disciplines upon the team, self-discipline it becomes, not to make mistakes at training, to communicate, to make sure you do all the things that are going to be required when you go out on the field. Because I'm sure that a team that trains well will play well. Play as you train as you play. Variety and fun are important aspects of that. Nothing worse than coming along to training knowing what to expect all the time. Make sure you create an environment where people have fun. Make sure as you train you encourage people, you support them. You know, at the end of the day, we all like to go away feeling good about ourselves. If you can leave the training run with 21 or 22 players in a squad, feeling good about the training run, feeling good about themselves, you've done a lot as you step towards the motivational requirements of the game. The choice of your captain is very important. When you're coaching kids, captaincy can be shared around. That's not a bad thing in itself. It encourages young players, gives them a feeling of self-esteem. But as you're growing and as you're going through the stages of development into teenage rugby and beyond, your captain is critical. And too often we make the mistake of picking the captain who's the best player. You've got to pick the player who has the leadership quality, the player who you know has the respect of a team, who's good at the job, but also is a good communicator and someone who can take the team with him. And you help achieve that by ensuring at training that the captain's voice is heard. You know, it's no use going to training and your voice being the only one that's heard, because come Saturday, it's the captain they have to respond to on the field, not you, the coach, on the sideline. Ensure that you pick a person you are comfortable working with, the team will respond to, and someone that can give the leadership required, which is something very important in a team sport. So don't be daunted by coaching. It's a great challenge. It can be great fun. There's no better reward than to see players performing and enjoying themselves. And if they achieve that, you certainly will achieve your goals.
Setting goals and aspiring to very high standards is what coaching is all about. And John Hart's approach is certainly one that will give you the results you strive for. Few would deny that Grant Fox strived for and set the highest standards and got the results as he rewrote the record books throughout his recent career. Who does the kicking on your team? if you'd like to improve the success rate of your goal kicker and win more matches, who better than the world's greatest exponent?
The sequence I'm going to take you through now is the way I believe that technically a rugby ball needs to be kicked in order for you to be successful. I'm going to teach you to teach yourself. Well, that's what I'm trying to achieve in theory, because in games of rugby, you can't have a coach run onto the field when you've missed a kick and tell you what you've done wrong. You can't stop the game and ask the referee to have it again. You have to ensure that from one kick to the next, you know technically what you are doing. One thing you should be doing here is starting to get a mental picture of what you're trying to achieve. Clearly, that is putting the ball through the goalpost over there somewhere. If you stand the ball straight up and down, as such, at the back of your run-up, back there, you should be watching the contact point. Now, all I do from this point, just before I go in to kick the football, is I say to myself, head down, follow through, which is really saying, watch the ball. If you watch what happens when I pull my left arm away, watch what happens to my head. It gets pulled back and behind the football, which means that your weight's going to be on your heel for a start. So you're kicking from a technically incorrect position.
Teach Yourself to Kick with Grant Fox also covers the art of punting and drop kicking. Grant shows how to master the skills of kicking with step-by-step demonstrations and provides you with the means of analysing and correcting errors. Grant's video is available now by writing or faxing to the producers of this video series. All your training and coaching expertise will come to naught if your young chargers don't heed your advice on building a strong body and mind with the correct diet. What constitutes a healthy diet and how to benefit from the use of carbohydrates and vitamins is explained now by Dr. John Mayhew, the All Blacks team doctor.
I'm often asked by a number of players and coaches, what the ideal diet of a rugby player should be. Unfortunately, there's no magic potion or food. The average rugby player needs to have a well-balanced diet with an emphasis on carbohydrate, and by that I mean plenty of pasta, cereal-type foods, bread, and products like that. I think one of the biggest issues which has changed and the rugby coach and player should be aware of is the need after training or after games to get energy back into the athlete, the rugby player. So if you have a training session or a rugby game, it's important to have some carbohydrate going back into the system after training. The easiest way to do this is to have products like bananas, lepin, or the Hawley's products, which come in little sachets of complex carbohydrates, which enable the body to assimilate this sort of starchy type food into the body and help prevent the breakdown of glycogen from the liver. The reason for doing this is, one, it helps the player recover from the sort of the strenuous aspects of training, and also enables his energy stores to be built up so he's able to train adequately and purposefully the following day. My advice to players is, following a hard training, they should have the equivalent of a couple of bananas, some lepin, or one of the Hawley's products, plenty of fluid, within an hour or so, go home or go back to the hotel or whatever they're doing, and have a decent meal, high in carbohydrates, say mashed potato, pasta, rice, those sorts of things, and replenish the energy stores.
What should players be eating during the week prior to a game?
I think that during the rugby season, really, the diet of the average New Zealand rugby player should have an emphasis on complex carbohydrates. So there's nothing wrong with our red meats and the occasional indulgence like McDonald's and things like that, but the overall diet should be one of plenty of bread, plenty of pasta, plenty of fruit, i.e. a well-balanced diet that our mother would be very proud of, and an adequate intake of vitamins in their natural form. The average New Zealander doesn't need to take any supplements. There's no need for vitamin tablets, injections, pills and potions. The New Zealand diet is high in vitamins and protein, and we need to make sure that we supplement that with a high carbohydrate intake.
In the 48 hours leading up to a game, what should a player be eating?
I think the average player in the build-up to a game needs to experiment themselves and find what foods they can assimilate, because a lot of people, because of their nervous condition or because they're apprehensive at a game, find certain foods don't agree with them. So it's a bit of trial and error, but the sort of foods they should be looking at, especially on the day of the game and the night before the game, are the pasta-like dishes, potato dishes, rice dishes, bread dishes, the cereals, and fruit. Obviously supplemented with a good fluid intake during the 24 hours prior to the game, and also immediately prior to the game, and obviously during the game as well.
What should players not be doing in regards to their diet? For example, skipping meals before games?
I think the sort of basic rules that I'd like to stress to rugby players is they need to sort of have a diet high in carbohydrate. They need to eat regular amounts of carbohydrate throughout the day. They need to have at least 3 meals a day. They need to eat plenty of carbohydrate after training, and following the completion of a game or training, have a proper meal. I mean, I often see at club level players train in the evening, they get home, they're too tired to have anything to eat, they crash out to bed or have a couple of beers and go to bed, and of course next day they're feeling tired, find it very hard to train. So an important part of a training program, and perhaps the coach could look at doing it at a club level, is providing a light meal, bananas, some of the commercially available supplements to take immediately after training, with the advice to the players to go home and have a decent meal. And I think that's the important thing.
Can you tell us a little bit about sport and liquid intake?
There are a number of commercially available sport drinks now, and the All Blacks are currently using Powerade. There's others like Gatorade, and Hawley's put out products. These are all very good products, and I think they're very useful to take in conjunction with ordinary water replacement. I think they have a place mostly after the exercise. The idea of a lot of these isotonic or slightly hypotonic drinks is that they enable the fluid to be absorbed much more easily than if you just had water alone. So they help replace the electrolytes which may be lost in sweating and in participation in sport, and it also enables a better absorption of water too in the post-exercise state. The other important factor at this time of the year for players who are training or playing pre-season games is to have an adequate intake of fluid before